Hello my friends, in this video we will talk about mid to late game macro. The most important thing is that I'm not showing you a game where the perfect macro is being played, because that's simply not true. But the idea of the basics that we want to use when it comes to mid and late game. So we will cover the basic fundamentals of League. How do we even get into a position to play mid to late game macro? So it's kinda every single time, it's basically the same in League. Lane assignments will break. What do we mean with lane assignments will break? There will be a moment where usually our AD carry and mid laners are basically swapping lane, but how do we even get to that point? Okay, let's quickly go back into this, for example. So usually what happens when we are breaking lane assignments, let's assume we are red side team here, is the best case is if you're having two pushes. So for example, let's say you would be pushing in this bot lane wave here, and now my Asi would push in this mid lane wave here, and now what we could do, theoretically, on this timer is Jhin just moving into mid lane and my Asi is moving bot lane. That would be like the easiest way to swap it out. We could obviously also let Vladimir open bot lane here out of base, and Jhin is going mid, and like Asi is shifting to top, right? There are a lot of ways to break lane assignments, but that's basically the first step into even like being in the position of playing mid to late game macro. Okay, so now lane assignments are kinda done. In this example, we would be having Vladimir top lane, Arze bot lane, and Jhin mid lane, right? Enemies are showing on vision on mid lane right now. The thing with mid to late game macro is that you can always swap your lane assignments around the way you want. The easiest way to do that is by generating a push, we talked about that already, generating a push, then basing, and then swapping lane assignments. That's the easiest way to do it. And now a lot is relying on these kind of mid waves. So, for example, the enemies are pushing in the mid wave here. Okay, I have no prior on this mid lane wave. So, theoretically, enemy bot lane could move into a specific side now. But my Bard and my Ambessa are here early. Now the important part. The most important part when it comes to mid to late game macro, even early game macro, is that we are always playing on wave, and best case even on Ken waves. You see here, even though we don't have mid lane prio, we are shifting into bot side, and you see here that we are having a wave. Right? So my Asia is kind of preparing the wave because the enemies don't want Gnar into Asia matchup. So the Talia is now opening into bot, Gnar is basing and opening into my Vladimir. We know this. We don't see Gnar contesting the wave. So if Gnar is not touching this wave, we know, okay, now enemy Talia must come bot lane. When Talia is touching the wave, we see our window and we punish her immediately. Okay. That's really good, right? What do the enemies do instead? Instead of moving down and trying to contest the play, they're going mid lane using Herald. Okay, so Herald is being put down, they destroyed mid lane turret. Okay, and now it comes down to objectives. Of course, like always objectives, setups, stuff like this, but it's not important to talk about setups now, it's important how we execute our macro. So after we have a winning play or like a losing play, it doesn't really matter, we always need to make decisions. And one of the most important decisions when it comes to mid and late game is that like we are making something after one fight. So here, for example, we won the fight and now we all have different jobs, and let's see what we are doing. So Jhin is clicking bot lane because he wants to crash this bot lane wave and the next bot lane wave. My Vladimir is already basing because he wants to touch the next top lane wave, and my Asia is shoving out mid lane. And my Bard is clearing bot side vision and still taking wards. So everyone basically has their own job. A lot of people in like maybe lower elos now, what would have happened is that every one of these players is just running mid lane. I see this a lot of times in my coaching. All of these players are just running mid lane trying to get the turret, but that is super inefficient. You still have two side lane waves, you have vision, you have jungle camps, stuff like this. So you should, like after play, always keep in mind, okay, what do I want to do next? And usually, like in this mid game scenarios, you want to shove out waves and be early on waves again, because the whole game is about waves. Okay. That's kind of it. We have Vladimir on top lane now. Our bot lane is moving back mid, and our Aze is going to bot lane, right? So we have the lane assignments that we kind of want for now. Okay, so now we are already a bit more into late game already. The important part when we are playing late game is that usually we cannot really play 3 lanes. So what we want to do is play 2 lanes. In this example, we have Nash right now, and our main targets are these kind of T2 turrets for now. Right? And if you're playing 3 lanes, the enemy usually have a cross map. So let's say, for example, my Azir would touch this bot lane wave now, the enemies would like come here into this position and then probably kill him. So what we do instead is we play 2 waves. So what we're doing is playing this mid lane wave, so we are sieging mid, right? You can always min-max on that one, like probably someone should have been early on this top lane wave already, but you get my point. Like enemies are just trolling here, we get free kills, And our basic macro rotation is just that we open 4-1, so 4 people into mid or 4 people into top, 1 pushing on mid, and then we're basically shifting into a side. So what you can do is always play mid lane into shifting side, right? You can always do that, or you open with like numbers on side lane and then play into mid lane and into shifting bot. That's also completely viable. And now you see we're getting T2 mid lane, we're getting like a good fight here still, but we're getting T2 top lane. And now, same thing happens again. We don't want to overstay our tempo because enemies are base. That's super important. Aside from my ambassador that is just trolling here. But usually, we want to now open bot side. We want to do the same thing bot side again. Push mid lane wave, then get here our vision and play for bot lane tier 2. And that's like kind of everything regarding the late game macro. Okay, let's take like a small step into Riftkit. It's like a really great tool you can use. So usually when we're entering mid lane, we already talked about the lane assignments thing. You can swap them around however you want. What is now getting like really important is actually getting mid lane priors, because mid lane priors will enable you to shift into side lane. Right? That's how we progress into mid game. What we can also do is to go into bot lane, put numbers there, and then play bot lane prior into shifting mid lane. You can do it like however you want, but usually we are playing mid into side lane. And then the important part is that usually jungle and support are together. So let's say you would be pushing mid lane here, and now you guys are moving bot lane, and our AD carry would move bot lane as well. And let's say the enemies would now match, right, with support and jungle. Then this guy here, the enemy AD carry, now needs to decide, okay, do I drop this mid lane wave to move to my team, or do I take the wave and we have numbers in this play? So that's like basically how it works whenever you want to progress. You get a priority somewhere on the map, you shift into a specific side, and then you play. What you can also do is define waves as specific waves. So for example, let's say we are here around mid lane and then we're pushing a wave, and then we're calling that wave get vision wave, for example. So let's say bam bam bam, we're pushing a wave, now we're going into river, here we are putting a ward here, we're putting a ward here, okay, and now we're going on next mid lane wave, and now we set up vision into enemy bot side here, right? And now on the next wave, that's our play wave. So on the next wave we are pushing in again and now moving bot lane, where we already provided vision for every single member of us, so it's easier to move into bot lane again, right? It's always the same kinda, and we will always play with numbers. So when we would shift down, of course we would have numbers again plus vision, so even if the enemy AD carry now would rotate, we would see it, right? So skipping steps is sometimes okay, but usually it's way better if we're playing a controlled game, good macro, and that's kind of it. And then of course later on you will have all these different objective setups. Usually when you're playing objective, let's say Dragon for example, you want to be 1 minute earlier on like the waves again, because if you're not 1 minute earlier on the wave again, it's hard to get like any sort of setups. So it's same thing again. Let's say you would be playing Drake, you're pushing mid waves, you're getting vision, you're hovering bot waves, for example. You can obviously also do this on side waves, by the way. It doesn't need to be mid wave always, but this is the only way of getting control. So now you're asking yourself, okay, what do I do if the enemy has like 3 winning lanes and is pushing everywhere? Well, not much. It's hard to play the game then. So if the enemies have 3 pushing lanes every single time in the whole game, then the game completely becomes unplayable. This is also why contesting priors and waves is super important, especially in the later game. So when the enemies have 2 priors, the game is still playable. But when like the moment they get 3 pushing lanes, you cannot really play the game, because you cannot contest vision. You can basically not contest anything. Like you will either die or be in danger of dying. That's it for the video already. I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to leave me any sort of feedback in the comments. Write me on Discord. Check out my coaching Discord, my Patreon, and I'm wishing you a nice day. Goodbye.